Podcast Network Asia.
Just a quick programming note before we start here. We talked to Paul London and Carlo Cannon thinking we would have them on for like 45 minutes, maybe an hour, pag napasarap yung kwentuhan, but we were so lucky, so fortunate that we got to have them for just a few seconds shy of 2 hours, literally, and we even chit-chatted for a few minutes pa after the call. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this interview up into two parts. The first part is about Paul London's thoughts on professional wrestling in 2023 and how his own philosophy towards the business has changed over the years. And then the second part, which drops maybe tomorrow, maybe in a few days after you're listening to this, or maybe it's already up on your feed if you're listening to this like next week or whatever. That one will cover questions like, what was he thinking when he chose to smile in that infamous pre-taped segment on Monday Night Raw from 16 years ago, right before Mr. McMahon's limo exploded? We also talked to him about how he was quite literally scarred by a trip to Manila. So all of that is going to be part of part two, all right? So without further ado, let's play that OBB, shall we?
What's going on? This is Xavier Woods, a.k.a. Austin Creed.
Welcome to the big time!
Hello, WWE Universe in the Philippines. This is Charlotte.
You know your damn role and shut your damn mouth.
Hey everyone, this is Jeff Cobb.
I have to finish the story.
We are pretty deadly. Yes, boy. Yes, boy.
Hello, my name is Ilya Dragunov, the star.
Bang! The sniper is shooting you down. This is TMDK's Robbie Eagles, and you are listening to the Wrestling Podcast.
You're listening to the longest-running weekly episodic Filipino wrestling podcast. This is the Wrestling Podcast. It's a very full house on this special audio-only episode of the pod, video-only for our patrons because they're the lucky ones who help keep us afloat over on patreon.com/Wrestling Podcast. Stancy at your service, Romoran, Emil ASH, Rowan ASH, they're here. We've also got a couple of very special guests calling in on an Independence Day recording session. First off, someone you just heard last week on a special episode, one of the Kuyas of the pod, Carlo Cannon, joining us. What's up, Carlo?
Hey, how you doing? Kuyas.
Great to have you back, Kuya.
That means older brother. That's
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. I was confused.
Oh yeah, my bad. We of course have to introduce the best for last, right? So let's bring in our other guest. He is a former WWE Tag Team Champion, a former Cruiserweight Champion as well, someone who has performed in Manila back in the year 2006. We're going to ask you about that. Please welcome the great Paul London.
Hi, what a house. Oh, hey.
Hello, sir.
Thanks,
Paul.
guys. This is super cool. Happy Independence Day.
No, thank you. It's super cool having you here with us.
Yeah.
No, this is great. Thank you to my best mate there, Carlo, for setting this up.
That's where we want to start off. Like, how did this friendship between Paul London and Carlo Cannon happen? Because when we had Carlo on last week, he spoke so much about you. And I'm like, wait, how did you guys link up? How did this friendship begin?
Well, Paul says he's my best mate, but I bet he doesn't remember. He says that we're best mates, but he doesn't remember.
Get out of here. We have shared ice cream sundaes together in bed. So, if that doesn't make you the best mate, Kuya, I don't know what does. So, can someone explain to me what that means, by the way, before I make too much of a fool out of myself?
No, he's right. It does really mean older brother.
Great. Well, I'm much older, actually, so I guess I would be the Kuya.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. When would that association have started? Like 2000?
I told you. Yeah, I remember. 12? I remember. Yeah, I think we had a show in Melbourne, and Paul was down, and he was feuding with my tag partner at the time, Slex. And I remember there was a promo segment where Paul and Slex, they were turning Slex into a babyface and keeping me as a heel. And Paul was trying to convince him to leave me and stay away from me, even to the point where he brought a taser to the ring. And that was not planned. You don't remember. I remember this very clearly.
Was this at the restaurant?
No, that's how we became friends. But the show that you were on, you did a run-in, and there was a stunt guy in the back that had a taser, and you ran to the ring and brought a taser out, and we weren't sure if you were going to taser us or not. I remember that was my first encounter with you in ring. And then we went and got food after. And by luck, we sat next to each other. And one of the conversations we spoke about was about, you remember about how far you could throw a little person?
Yes, maybe I do remember. This is starting to come back to me now.
Yeah. We figured how far we could throw one. And from there, the friendship blossomed. We knew that we had the same sense of humor. And it all came from there. Then I think, you come back a few times to Melbourne. We'd hang out when you were allowed to.
That's right. I was a prisoner of Hungry Jack's.
Which is
I was in Hungry. I was in
Burger King.
Yeah, I was in Hungry Jack jail. So I'm addicted to CTE. So I try to collect as much brain damage as I can whenever I wrestle. So his memory is much better than mine. But it's all starting to come back to me quite a bit. And to clarify, we were talking about how far we could throw villainous, bad people of smaller stature, so not just like, hey, there's somebody who's like 4 feet tall, let's throw him, because that would be bullying, and we don't condone that. So
it's not very Kuya behavior. Not very Kuya behavior.
No. Are y'all familiar with Wang Wang?
Yes. If I love about the fireworks and the drinks, then yes.
Oh no, I'm talking about the actor.
Oh no.
Wang Wang. But it's a very heroic little person.
He's like standing 3 feet. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he's great. Some of my favorite. I learned a lot of my action actually from him. And I love making.
You had me at the taser.
Yeah, the taser thing. I really don't remember that.
How does that get cleared at a show?
Okay, so do you not remember that? Do you remember that guy? So we had like an Australian version of like Jackass there, and they were running around the back doing some stunts.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and then suddenly, for some reason, I had a promo segment in ring with Slex, and Paul was meant to come out and interrupt it and just, convince Slex to leave or whatever. And Paul came out with a taser and started chasing me with a taser. And I wasn't sure. I didn't know Paul very well then, so I wasn't sure if he was going to tase me or not. That was our first interaction in ring.
I mean, and honestly, that's to me the essence of what genuine professional wrestling should be about, is an air of danger, like a real bit of just, an atmosphere of danger. I think that's, I maybe not so known. I have quite a few issues with modern day professional wrestling. And maybe I'm just an old curmudgeon, but to me, having been fortunate enough to be brought in by true legends who, really made their name on the historic territory days of professional wrestling, I was very fortunate to learn from these legends. And so for me, I was brought in a very kind of old school way, and I take a lot of pride in kind of being one of the few people who is kind of a transitionary wrestler from the territory learning kind of methodology to kind of the modern style of things now. especially because at my size, it was very rare for me to get training at all. Most guys kind of our size, we wouldn't, the only way we'd be allowed at a wrestling show is if we bought a ticket, So I do have a very kind of old school mentality and an appreciation for the business. And with that is just a love and an appreciation for the old territory days and professional wrestling, how it used to be. And with that, there was always kind of a real sense of danger. Today, I think professional wrestling is so overproduced, and it's so there's so much of a concern and a thought for making it like a safe place. And I'm not saying this in a way of like, it should be nasty and hateful or anything like that, but I'm just saying there should be a thrill of danger, that anything could happen and chaos could erupt at any moment, especially if you're a fan. But even in the sake of the wrestlers, we're talking about days when the heels and faces changed in opposite sides of the building. And so I feel that modern day wrestling is overproduced. It's overplanned. It's over choreographed. To me, it's too video gamey, and I'm not into it. And so I think Carlo's reaction to me standing there with the taser was probably pretty real, because he didn't know if I was going to tase him or not, right? And so, but if we had talked about it in the back, and I had planned it and been like, I'm going to bring out this taser, and like, you act like you don't know if I'm going to tase you or not, and it would have looked stupid. I think it would have looked phony, because it would have been phony, right? So that not knowing, I think that adds a lot to the mystique and the magic that pro wrestling is and should be, if that makes any sense. And so I'm glad I did that. I wish I would have actually tried to tase you.
Oh no, you were. I know you out with it, and you were pressing it. Like I could hear that. I was like, "Oh, it's on." Like it wasn't like you just had it. You were pressing it, and I could see the spark. Oh yeah,
when you
I
said
said
Jackass guys, I remembered it more so because they were like, "Yeah, this will be great, man!" Like they,
I remember telling Slex, I told Slex that. I looked at him and go, if he starts tasing, bro, I'm running. I'm leaving you. Just know that. So he goes, no, I'm coming with you. I'm coming with you. And I'm like, I'll see if I can get the footage, but I'm pretty sure you just see it. So I'm like,
please give me the footage. I would like that footage. I would use it on our TikTok.
Yeah. I love it.
But I have a question though. For Paul, you brought up the philosophy of these things, and it got me thinking already. You said that you don't agree with how wrestling nowadays is overproduced and overplanned. But
yes.
When I was watching you in the 2000s, your cruiserweight style was not like how the bigger guys would wrestle. So how is that different from what you don't agree with happening now?
Well, no, and that's a great question. I was in my 20s, probably at the time that you were referring to, and my philosophy's matured quite a bit, and it's changed quite a bit. And I can say that at that time, my mindset was different because I was still a little guy in the land of giants and in the land of the behemoths, right? So I was fortunate to have made it kind of through the cracks to get into that so-called kind of promised land of the behemoths. And I fortunately, I was able to get there on dedication, hard work, and a lot of luck, but it didn't go without a ton of sacrifice, and so one of my I guess attributes, something that's always really worked well for me, was my ability to make maybe lesser talents look much more credible and better than they are. Unfortunately, sometimes it's called a worker's curse, because you'll get put in that position more often than not, when you're able to really make others look great or even better. I was thrown so many projects when I was working with WWE. I mean, every new signing, every new character, gimmick, whatever, I would always have to go through these people because they knew that I would at least make them look as how they hoped that they would consistently look. But for working with other cruiserweights, it's kind of like, well, I'm not being given I'm not being put with a character, so to say, and any character ideas or any creative ideas that I present, they don't care about it. They don't I'm kind of an afterthought in terms of being made into a money-making character or somebody that they want to really put in their storylines. That just wasn't really in the cards for me at the time. And so my theory was always well, I'm going to impress them with my physical abilities. And again, at that time, cruiserweight wrestling was kind of frowned upon. The company was never high on it. And, that was unfortunate because we had great talents working in the cruiserweight division at the time. But that was also a bit of a holdover from kind of I would say my Ring of Honor time, and the little bit of time I spent at TNA was just having worked with other cruiserweights that I admired and had looked up to, growing up, or at least, as a teenager, and admiring these guys who I was thinking man, they're the same size I am. I do have a chance to make it in pro wrestling because they're able to do that. And you kind of you get into this workflow where, and mind you, also on television, unfortunately, you do have to structure more for the sake of timing. So it's, you can't be told, okay, you have 8 minutes with entrances. Here's your finish. We'll just figure it out there. Unfortunately, you don't have that luxury, because they want to know, hey, if there's a commercial break, what exactly are you going to do before we cut to a commercial? What exactly are you going to do when we come out of the commercial? What exactly are you going to do? And so you're working with these producers, who are generally, stars of yesteryear, or, former, retired, pros and whatnot. And they're literally kind of jotting down everything that they want you to do. And so in that regard, creatively, it's a bit stifling because you have to come up with everything you're doing. And you're sitting here thinking well, I don't, who's to say if the crowd's even going to buy this? So to me, it comes off as kind of stale. When you're in that workflow, you don't think about it that way so much because you're, working 4 or 5 times a week, over 300 days a year. And you start finding just things that work and things that don't work. You're using a lot of this, you're getting rid of that. And plus other guys, depending on who you're working with, maybe they want to phone it in and have an easy night, or whatever. But that ability to call things on the fly and create your match with good psychology as it goes, depending on what the crowd is giving you or not giving you. To me, that's a lost art. And I'm fortunate that I was taught that by lots of greats. I'm very fortunate for the wrestlers who trained me. But it wasn't anything that fell into my lap. I went after it and I went and got it, and I slept in my car, and I starved myself, and I did whatever I could to get training from the very best. And so I was very fortunate to learn that. But again, not very many people are taught that, and even less are comfortable trying that. But to go back to your question, yeah, when you're on television, unfortunately, it's more so now than even when I was there. It has to have some real structure to it, where it tends to just be overproduced. Because TV matches now are much more accelerated, and I think make less sense than they did when I was there. And the matches when I was there, meaning on TV for like WWE, those matches made as much sense as we could make out of them, but they were still, I would say, overproduced compared to, say, TV matches of the early 90s and the 80s, which I thought still made a lot of sense because they were coming up as they went. And maybe they weren't the most athletically amazing matches in the 80s or 90s, but boy, did they know how to tell stories. And that's really what does it for me now, more so, where, and especially having trained in martial arts, I don't like watching professional wrestling when it makes me feel like an idiot watching it. When it makes me feel like dumber than I already do. I don't like, I can watch somebody take a kick right to the face and pop right up, or they'll reverse something and then they're coming out and it just, that tells me this person has never been kicked in the face before, ever, because that is complete bullshit. Sorry, there I am cussing. Yeah, so to me, it's just ridiculous. Like, you're going to tell me that the kid that just served me ice cream over the weekend at the mall is now this like mega soldier warrior, badass that can get his arms cut off and take a gunshot to the face. And now he's nipping up and hulking up and I'm done. Like, no, I'm good. This is stupid. If I want to play video games, I'll play video games. Like, I don't want to watch a video game that I have no control over. Like, to me, that's just, it's stupid. We're all marks in one degree or another, right? Or we wouldn't even be on this podcast right now. So, that, a mark it has kind of a negative connotation to it. But it's really just kind of dependent on how you use it. But I think if you're in the wrestling business, then there's some form of a mark in you, some degree of a mark in you. And to me, there's still some hope that you're hoping to lose yourself in what you're watching. You're hoping for some form of magic to it's the same reason we're all still going to see movies and going to the cinema. We know what it is. We know how it's done, so to speak. We know the inner workings of it, so to speak. We know it's not 1,000% legit. But if there are moments where we actually think like, well, I don't know, that was pretty real. Like, or I think that hurt. Like, that had to have hurt. Like, even just those little slivers of belief. That's ultimately what I'm always hoping for. That's why I'm still involved, because I want that. I crave that. And when I see somebody getting kicked in the face repeatedly, or they're starting their match off with destroyers and both nipping up, and I'm like, this is stupid. I'm done. You lost me immediately. But if this match, might look like a legitimate wrestling struggle, and there's a decent kind of throw line going here, and he just keeps grabbing the headlock, he can't get out of it. He keeps grabbing the headlock, even though it's like a headlock. I would much rather see a match that's kick, punch, body slam, headlocks that makes sense than some ridiculous fireworks show between two skinny people that probably can barely do 10 push-ups. And but they're hulking up, they're taking kicks to the face, they're getting punched 10 times, backed up to the ropes just to reverse it. And it's like, show me somebody who's never been in a bar fight, or who's never been in a fight, period, and I'll show you, Wednesday Night Wrestling or AEW wrestling or any of this kind of nonsense that just is, to me personally, is just insulting, because it's just stupid. Like, it's you can't convince me that what I'm seeing is believable, because it's not. It's, to me, that's insulting. I would much rather see something a bit slower. And with selling, oh my God, there's a notion. Heaven forbid you actually are affected by what was done to you, you know? But no, everybody's a superhero now. Everybody's part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and everybody dresses like a superhero. And it's just, it's a lot of that doesn't do it for me. You know, it just doesn't. I want to be fooled into thinking that what I'm seeing is by chance real. I know it sounds silly, but it can be done, and it is doable, but it takes a commitment, you know? And so when you get a lot of these idiots who are like, oh, kayfabe is dead, man. That's an old school way of thinking. Like, you old heads, like, oh, kayfabe. It's like, no, you're just, you lack commitment. You lack commitment, and you lack dedication, and you care more about being liked on social media by a bunch of people you'll never meet in real life. Being liked and popular on social media is now, that's the currency in professional wrestling. That's what people value more than anything, unfortunately. Like, upping your OnlyFans account subscriptions, and upping your numbers and your likes, and to me, that's stupid. It's nonsense. You know, like, have more pride in your craft, have more pride in your work, especially because you're putting your body on the line doing this stuff. So take pride in being an illusionist, take pride in being a wrestler, take pride in being believable, take pride in making the people think that what you're doing is legit. Don't just give this crap away because you're lazy and you're like, everybody already knows it's fake. So, like, what's the big deal? Like, you know, it's just, no, you're an idiot. Like, to me, that's disrespectful. And I think that's weak. And I have no interest in that style of mentality in wrestling, because that's not the way I was brought up, and that doesn't do it for me. And I'm a bigger fan of full-on commitment and dedication to maintaining those secrets, maintaining that illusion. You know, so.
Well, I am very guilty of all of that you mentioned.
We all are. We all are. I'm not kidding. We all are. Right? Like, I survived getting dumped on my head, where I broke my neck almost and looked like I shouldn't have gotten up. And then, like, you know, we all are. Whatever reason it is, it happens. But if we're aware of it, hopefully that will allow us to at least be aware of it, you know, to avoid, you know, like, we're in this blood feud and, like, I hate your guts and I'm going to kill you this weekend. And then, like, we have this match, and then it's like, thanks for taking care of me. I love you. Can't wait. Let's go shopping, and, like, taking selfies together, like, at dinner. Like,
I have a two-parter question here. Both of you can answer, Carla and Paul. How long did it take you guys to know and understand the workflow that Paul mentioned, that you don't over plan things anymore, and, you know, you do what feels right in the moment?
Go ahead, Mr. Muscles.
Shut up. Lance is very straightforward, and we pretty much had that from the get-go. Like, we would do a lot of stuff like that from the start. I know for me, I didn't understand wrestling for a long time. I didn't understand how every match wasn't the exact same way, and how it was completely different until I got out there, started wrestling more, and meeting people like Paul. I picked Paul's brain all the time, and I learned so much, spending so much time with him. And I'd ask questions, and I'd be like, shut up, it's true. And I'd be like, I don't get it. What about this? What about that? We always go, as you can tell, me and Paul, we like to talk, like, for ages, and we get very passionate about wrestling. I think that's why we click so well, because we love it so much, and we're happy to question and like argue points that people kind of bring up if it doesn't really make sense. So for me, I reckon in my first 5 years, I didn't understand wrestling. I just knew how to do the moves. I kind of understood the structure, but I was just doing it. And until I understood storytelling and understanding that you can't tell stories without characters and you need to be a character and then be put, it's almost like, you think of it like, I always bring this up with my students. I tell them about, like, you know, if you watch season 1 of like The Walking Dead, you're establishing every single character and what their role is and who they are and what they're supposed to do. And then in season 2, you take those characters you understand and put them in a different environment and see what they do and how they interact with different people. And that's what our wrestling storytelling we should be able to do in terms of storylines, in terms of within a match. Like we don't have weekly television. We don't have, you know, we can't trust everyone to watch our social media to understand the story. So I have, from my entrance alone, for you to understand and get what I am, what I'm doing, and what I'm presenting, for you to get feelings on whether you like or hate me. And then for my entrance alone and my actions and mannerisms in ring, and then the first start of that match, I'm going to tell you a story. And by the end of it, you should be hooked and understand what I believe in and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And you have a very finite time to do that, especially in this day and age with TikTok and all that being 15 seconds and people's attention span being so short. I literally have to come out through that entrance and have you hooked from the start and keep consistently reminding you why you should be interested. So it is harder now. And I think that's why people don't understand that there is a slow burn and you can tell that story and you can, and people always feel like, I relate it to like someone if you're in a car with someone that's awkward and doesn't know what to do, they're going to keep talking to you nonstop because they don't like the silence, right? But the silence is where things sit and marinate and you feel it. But because they're nervous and because they don't trust themselves, they're insecure, they just keep talking. Because you might not like them or it might be boring. And that's what people think wrestling has to be. Spot. Oh shit, they're bored. Nah, like I'm going to punch you. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to enjoy. There's a better story in me punching you in the face, looking at you, and then the thought process I have in my mind of how I feel about punching you in the face, right? So there's more mileage in what I do beforehand and after than the actual impact, because that's telling the story and giving meaning to what I'm doing. So, for instance, when I wrestled Wonder Boy in Malaysia, and I grabbed him and I made that remark of, if you think wrestling's fake, watch this. And I just felt like I really punched him as hard as I could in the face. The pullback, I looked at him and the intensity, like my videographer had it in slow-mo. Achilles was filming it and you see me spitting and angered. I was like, whoa. And I pull back and I punch him and I'm looking at him. And in my head, I'm like, I legitimately just punched this guy in the face. But my face is saying, like, eat it. This is, yes. And I'm enjoying it. And I start smiling and relishing it. And you're looking at him because, again, we can only watch one thing at a time. So if you're watching me, you're seeing me enjoy it, but I'm not really doing much. And you look at him and he's dying in pain and I let it sit. I didn't move. I just stood there and within 3, 4, 5 seconds, they started a holy shit chant from a punch. I don't need to kill myself. I don't need to do crazy destroyers. I don't need to... me punching someone legitimately in the face and you're like, I think he punched him for real because I more likely punched him in the face for real.
Love it.
There's the magic there. And there was the lead up before and and now I don't have to do anything because that's what it is. Like I think it's being comfortable in the silence. And if you're putting that, but that took me so long to even understand that because I was so worried that if I let it sit and marinate, they're going to think I suck or I don't know what I'm doing or I look confused. But if we're in a real fight, you don't know every single thing you're going to do. I'm going to sit there and reassess and think about it. The UFC guys do it all the time. You watch UFC, they're assessing what they're going to do. That's what a real fight is. And again, like Paul said, you can tell when someone's been in a real fight or not, just from how they stand, let alone because people haven't been taught how to stand properly. Across their feet. But like that's for me. It took a good. Someone told me in my first 5 years of wrestling, they said, when you see one Carlo Cannon match, you've seen them all, and that really hit home for me because I was like, that's true. Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't understand how it's not going to be the same until I understood my character, until I understood my motives, like all the motivations. Stan knows about this because I taught this in my class last week that he joined in on, and I was just talking about how like there has to be a reason for your character, why they chose wrestling and not MMA and boxing, and what their motivations are into winning the world title. Because if you're not there to win the world title, what's the point of being a wrestler anyway? So like when you understand these deep-seated motives of who you are as a person, you can insert them into stories. So that took me at least five years, you know.
Damn, you learned faster than I did. It took me longer. Where it's just like, man, like this is all starting to feel similar. Like, why? I don't know. I think a lot of it too. I mean, Carlo hit it on the head when he said there's an insecurity there, and you know, unless you come from a combative, competitive background, whether it be in amateur wrestling, martial arts, MMA, whatever it might be, high intensity bowling, darts. No, but you know, yeah. Then he, you know, you're right. There is an insecurity there. I think every performer, every professional wrestler, like early on at some point, their biggest fear is to get a boring chant. And so, you know, like he said, it's like I have to fill up all this space with action, or they're going to be bored, or somebody's going to start chanting that. And I would say, like, for me, having been able to see firsthand and study and also pick his brain, a lot of, you know, these legendary guys, but you know, it depends on your persona too. Like, we're not all going to be the size of the Undertaker. We're not all going to have that persona either, but I was still able to learn a lot from watching him, because there's, you know, and also from acting, my training in acting, I mean, there's power in stillness. And what I mean is, you know, if you're running around trying to create action or create visual noise, I mean, that's kind of really what it is. Whereas, you know, and if it's like, if you're constantly moving and doing all this kind of stuff, to me, you look nervous. But as an audience member, I can look away and talk to my friend or talk to the person next to me, or I can go get a snack or go to the bathroom and come back. And chances are this person's still going to be moving around and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to miss anything. But when they slow down and there's a stillness, it almost forces the audience to pay attention, because now they're sitting here watching the water about to boil, but they don't know when it's going to happen. So there's a power in stillness, and it takes a lot of experience. I think it takes a lot of confidence, but you're really kind of owning who you are. And to go on to what Carlo was saying as well, here's to me something that I use when I train wrestlers, but also when I try and help teach, whether it's at seminars or in a class. It's wrestling with intent. Okay. So when I say that most matches nowadays are overproduced, they are, but they're not only overproduced, they're overproduced in the wrong way. And what I mean by that is that most wrestlers, they focus more on how, and this goes hand in hand in acting, because as an actor, if I'm reading a scene and I'm reading my lines and I'm sitting here thinking like, how should I play this? Like it says, you know, with anger or whatever, it says, you know, how should I do this? And you're losing sight of the real essence of it, which is why. With wrestling, because it is as physical of a art as there is, there's nothing else like it. Obviously, you learn early on, more so How do you do this? How do you lock up? How do you grab a headlock? How do you run the ropes? How do you take a bump? How? And that just becomes everything that you know is how. Well, I know how to do that. Well, I know how. Great. I can pretty much teach anybody how with enough time. But when you start learning and understanding and being aware of why, that's where it starts to really separate you from everybody else. Because then you're wrestling with intent. For example, how many times will you see in a match someone will get thrown? First of all, we all do it. I don't really do it so much anymore because I'm hyper aware of it. But the handing your hand to somebody to shoot you off, to me, infuriates me, right? Because I know that we're taught at some point, like, wow, make yourself an easy guy to work with. Like, that is a terrible misconception and shouldn't be taught, right? Where it's like, if you take a bump and you feed up to the ropes and they come in to shoot you off, just kind of do a little with your hand, right? So they can just grab it and send you off. False. Don't teach that. Don't learn that.
Right.
Because I don't care if they're 4 years old or 80 years old. Somebody in that crowd is going to be like, why is he helping them? Like, why is he, what? Are they working together? Huh? And then the illusion's gone, right? That's like the boom mic dipping into the screen, into the frame. When you're watching them, you're like, oh, what the fuck? What? It was close.
It's all good.
I'm trying so hard. But, so, yeah. God. So for me, I want to see the wrestler go and grab their arm and throw them up. I don't care if it looks kind of janky. I don't care if it looks whatever. I'll take it. Much more over, I'm gonna slip you my hand here, all secretive. No, like, who can't see that? So even if it's just one kid, one person in the audience, why is he helping him? The illusion's gone. So, but the point I was going to make was, okay, so you see that every match constantly. I'm a smooth worker, man. I'm easy to work with. No, you're an idiot. Someone will get shot to the corner. Okay. Now, I call, put up an elbow, put up a boot, move, whatever it is that I call. I don't know what that is, but whatever I'm feeling on at the moment. I send them off to the corner and I call that. So I start charging in. Now I know what I called. I know they're going to move. I know they're going to put up a boot. I know they're going to put up an elbow, hopefully, right? 9.8 to 9, 10, whatever tenths of a time out of 10, you will see that this idiot now who just shot them off and secretly knows what's going to happen goes running in, right? They just run in like this. And they put up a boot. They put up an elbow. They move. It's nonsense. Because to the audience, I shouldn't look like I know that I'm running in to take something or knowing that they're going to move. So I sent them to the turnbuckle. My intent as a visual fighter, wrestler, whatever, should be that I threw him to the turnbuckle. I'm going to run in there with a forearm, or I'm going to run in there with a boot or something. I'm running in with something, right? I know they're going to put up an elbow. I know they're going to put up a boot or move. I know that. They don't need to know that. And so I always think like, what if that person didn't put up a boot or doesn't put up an elbow or doesn't move because they didn't hear it? Then you're just running in with like a running hump or something. Like you're just running into like a running hug is usually what it turns into, right? And so it's silly. Another spot that like infuriates me so much, and it's kind of more of like a lucha libre spot. And mind you, lucha libre is its own animal because it is very much a dance, and it is what it is. But we've adopted this spot that happens in all the time, and it's like the I kick out of something and the wrestler comes running at me and I'm on my knees and I just tap them on the back of the leg and they take a big bump and I cover them and they kick out, and then I run at a person who's on their knees with no intent. I just almost run like to the side, like I'm not even running at them. I'm running kind of to the side so they can tap me on the leg and then I fall. Horse shit. Like, it's so stupid, right? Because again, this person watch that spot. You know what spot I'm talking about, right?
Yes,
We've all seen
it. I've been taught it.
Yeah, we all have, and we were taught poorly, all of us, because it's just like, well, that's the way the spot goes. No, because realistically, it's like I kicked out. I'm starting to get up. They should have the intent that they are coming at me with a boot or to pick me up or something. And then I should more so do like a leg sweep, like yank their legs out with all my might and pull them off their feet and then cover. It should really be grueling. But instead, it's like this little tippy tap crap on the back of the leg. Like, who's that honestly going to take off their feet? Nobody. It's the stupidest spot in the world. It's so dumb. And yet people do it all the time, and then they double nip up. And fight forever. Fight forever. Like, nah, shut the... Oh, God. It makes me sick.
All right. For the second part of my question, I'm glad that you ended on that note because we're guilty of all of that, partly because, or mostly because, we know that's what the crowd wants. So how do we do that? How do we balance that? Is that valid on the crowd's end, or is that something we make them realize?
The crowd thinks they want that. They don't know any better. They don't know any better. The reason they want that is because that's all they ever see. That's all they ever see. So instead of working for a chant or working for a pop, ignore all that. Eliminate that entire process of working for a chant or working for a pop. It's idiotic. It's fool's gold. No, it's fool's gold. I'll put it that way. Work in the mindset of being real. Work for realism. And if they chant, great. And if they don't, so be it. But they will be paying attention. I'll tell you that. They will be paying attention, and it will stand out because you will be the one making it look believable when everyone else is doing this tap on the leg, back of the leg, running. Let them have all that crap. Let the rest of the card do all that crap. Let the rest of the card shoot me up. Here's my hand. I'm so smooth. I'm so easy to work with. Let them do the running hug humps in the corner with no intent. Let them all do that. Let them work for pops. Let them work for their chants, their fight forever crap. Let them do that. You will automatically stand out because now you're working with intent. Just like Carlo was saying, you can tell who's been in a real fight and who hasn't. Professional wrestlers love to block punches with their face. It is the stupidest thing in the world, but there is like zero defense in professional wrestling. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah. Yes.
Like zero defense.
We get made fun of if we try to play defense.
Well, then whoever's making fun of you doesn't belong in the business because they don't get it. They don't get it. That's a weak mentality in my mind, because then it's like, oh, this person's playing defense. What do I do? Oh, I don't know. Like, strategize, make it make sense, add psychology to what you're doing, right? Tell a story. Defense alone would tell a story, right? So it's idiotic. Another example. I mean, I've got endless amounts of examples.
Oh, we're learning
right?
here. We're learning so much.
You lock up, right? You lock up. Bam. Jostle. They pull you into a headlock. First of all, headlocks where it's like lock up. Hey, buddy. Hey. Crap. That's crap. That's a crap headlock. A headlock, you lock up. One of you pulls that person in. Wham! I got the advantage. I got it on you first. You pull them into a headlock. You don't buddy system doing that crap. It looks stupid. But usually that's what happens, because they don't care about the headlock. The headlock's just dressing to get into our cool spot. Nah. No. Every single thing needs to be broken down with intent. Right? So you pull them into the headlock. Wham, wham. Maybe they want to shoot you off. No, I'm not leaving yet. Bam, bam. Eventually they give you a couple elbows. They send you off. 9.9% repeating out of 10. What is the person who is in the headlock? What do?
They back up to the ropes.
Okay, right. Well, I'm saying once they send you off.
Oh, once they send you off, you go.
I was in a headlock. I was in a headlock. No. I was in a headlock. I send you off. Mm-hmm. You go and hit the ropes. You're coming off the ropes. What is the person who was in the headlock? 9.9 out of 10. Usually, what do?
They go for the drop down.
They take a tackle for no reason.
Oh yeah, they take a
tackle
for no reason.
They walk right into it, and they're watching it the whole time. Okay, like, I don't know why that car ran over me. I just walked right into the highway, and I thought, you're an idiot. Like, were you not just in a headlock? Man, even if you just acknowledge the headlock for a second, they don't know. These people don't know that it didn't wrench your neck. I mean, if it looks like a crap headlock, there's that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of crap headlocks. I can do destroyers. I can do poison ranas. I can do all this stuff. Yeah, show me a headlock. Headlock looks like shit. You're done. I'm done. Like, no. That's what happens in school. Like in these trainings, you see these schools. They want to do all this stuff. They can't lock up for shit. They can't do a headlock for shit. So you make the headlock mean something. Make every single thing mean something, right? But that's also on the responsibility of the person receiving it. Because if you're not selling it, well, then it obviously didn't hurt. It obviously didn't do anything. And so selling drives the story forward, because without it, none of it matters. None of it matters. How many of y'all have had something where you did something and it would have been great? The people loved it when it happened, and it would have been great had the other person actually acknowledged it. But instead they jump right up and they start doing this and this. And then, like, whatever you did was completely forgotten about. It was erased like that. And they threw it away. They just got thrown away. Right. So you never want to be that worker, but to be in a headlock, man, like that's like a vice, like a bear trap on your head. Right. Wham, wham. Oh shit. Bam. Right. So just give it an acknowledgement, at least, instead of just like, oh, I can't believe I got knocked down. Woo-hoo. Like,
on that poll too, I think a lot of them, like I've noticed when I've got students that come from other schools or whatever, we were always taught there's a reason for everything. Like we got put, like Lance would put the hold on me for real and squeeze and show me this is why it hurts, right? And you realize that, like, for instance, like when I got put in the headlock, he showed me which way you put your hands, and then the forearm drives into your cheekbone and it pushes your cheekbone up, and then you lean on them, so you push their head up like a Pez dispenser. So when I push the guy off, this thing is grinding on my face. So it hurts. If I'm holding onto something and physics dictates that I'm pushing and I stop and they keep going, this thing's going to grind on my face. So that hurts. Or maybe I push him and I'm off balance because I took everything I had. So I'm on one foot. So that would make sense why I get knocked over. But no one really looks at the reason is why they're doing it. Same as like, Paul, I'm sure you see this one where they back him up into the rope with the headlock. And the guy gets the ropes and he lets go to hold the rope. I'm like, the guy just pulled his head out of the headlock. Like, you're no longer in a headlock.
Love that one.
There's all little things like that. And like, I learned a lot. Like when I had, had a couple of tryouts, and this is before the Performance Center, and you do it before Raw and SmackDown and stuff like that. Regal broke down that to us, and he said it. And he says, half these workers don't do this. And Regal explained every single spot. And I was like, even things that I thought I knew, like with the drop down, I thought, I thought I was ready. It was like, why do we drop down? I was like, oh, I know. And he goes like, to trip them. And he goes, how many people have tripped? And I'm like, yep, that's fair. And he goes, the only one that would ever look like they would try to trip them was Eddie, because he'd slide into their legs.
Yeah.
True.
He goes, but if you look back at when the international was done, then it was done in England, it was 2 tackles. They tackle him, then they get up and tackle him again. So you're thinking logically, if I stand up for a third time, I'm taking a tackle. So I'll drop down and get out of the way like a dodge. So they're dodging it.
Get out of the way.
And then you get up to your feet and there's no point going back down, but there's not enough time to do anything else. So I'll jump up, and that's the leapfrog. But even little spots like that, your face should show that. It's like, oh shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you should be showing those little things. And I learned that the hard way in front of everyone, because I didn't know, but I had the balls enough to at least put my hand up and say something. But again, I think we go through the process of just going through the motions of what we think wrestling is, and we play wrestler. We play, this is how, I've fallen on my back and gotten winded, and I don't reach for my back. I'm like, oh, I can't breathe. You know what I mean? When I'm in a wrist lock and my wrist hurts, why am I tapping my shoulder and doing what? I don't know what that is. Right? And
it reverberates a massage down to your wrist.
It's the vibrations. Yeah.
Paul, I want to go back to something that you said earlier. Sorry, Carlo.
No, you're good.
All right. I want to go back to something you said earlier, Paul, about the superhero mentality that some wrestlers want to have, and these outsized characters that kind of take away from the realism. How were you able to reconcile that when you were working as the White Rabbit in Lucha Underground?
Well, Lucha Underground was quite the exception, because we created the atmosphere that this is an environment that has superpowered women. This is an environment that has snake people. This is an environment that has zombies. So like that really allowed the environment for realism to be as expanded as it could possibly be, right? So we killed people on that show, so like anything could happen, anything, right? So with the White Rabbit stuff and the Rabbit Tribe, that was the most fun I've ever had in wrestling, because we're now able to add kind of like an air of joy and laughter to so much of this stuff that's so serious. But then we would also understand that if we're just comedic, then it's going to be harder to take us seriously. So we have to do things at the same time, usually as a 3-person trio with, so we started doing like the triple punch, because we figured, well, like, to get punched once sucks, but to get punched by 3 different people at the same time, like, and that's even worse, like, wham, or whatever it might be. So that was the benefit of being able to use the 3 of us at the same time. And we really wanted to make it look that way. But it was also kind of, like, I guess kind of Joker-esque, where it's like, just because these people are laughing or having a good time or whatever, can kind of fool the person that they're up against into not taking them as seriously, and then you're able to really catch them in a vulnerable state because they put their guard down by not taking you so seriously. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, that was definitely the most fun I've had. And there's some Rabbit Tribe stuff on the horizon. So it's not the last.
We love Lucha Underground. So when you came in
Yeah.
and you started doing the Rabbit Tribe stuff, we popped for that stuff a lot.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, initially, they presented me with this idea of being like the guy to like lead this Rabbit Tribe, and I was trying to wrap my head around it because I didn't, I was like, well, we have like snakes and zombies and
yeah, like how much weed you have to smoke to just put it together.
Yeah, honestly. Well, I just, and I was training in Wing Chun at the time, Kung Fu.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was really serious about like my martial arts, and I was really serious about what I was doing. And so I was sitting here thinking of, when they presented this Rabbit Tribe idea, I was like thinking like serious, like, oh, this is like, should I make it like warriors or virtue, or like battle beasts or something? And like I was trying to think of like, how do you make rabbits like badass, and cool and take them seriously. And so we actually had a dry run, and it fell kind of flat because we were all dressed the same, and we looked like scuba divers.
This is when you had that bodysuit, right?
Yeah. So we all had a similar bodysuit, same design, color, all that kind of stuff. And Krista Joseph, a good friend of mine who was like the head writer at Lucha, because I became a part of the writing team as well. I was supposed to debut in season 2, but I had hurt my knee in a match with Brian Cage. And this was like on the independents. So I'd hurt my knee. And so I was not able to compete or work for season 2, but I was able to be in the back as a producer. And that allowed me to really absorb and learn the atmosphere and everybody's, strengths and weaknesses and who the characters were and all this kind of stuff, and get my feet wet as a producer and as an agent, whatever. So then I came out in season 3, and I was still a producer and an agent and a part of the writing committee. So there was like 4 of us on this writing team. And so when he was, he was like, it kind of looked, wasn't really what we were thinking. We were thinking kind of like more like Alice in Wonderland. And like the second he said Alice and he didn't even have to say Wonderland, I was just like, of course. How did I not see this? Right. So that really defined what it was about. And I downloaded like all these pictures of cod pieces and sent it to him. I was like, it has to have this, He's like, I love it. Yeah. And it just grew and grew. And then I really took a hold of that whole thing. And, the guys that were in the group with me really embraced what they were doing too, because for Mala Suerte, it was very different than what he does in the independents, like very different. He doesn't even work in a mask. And then for like Saltador, he does work in a mask on the independents, but he would have been more similar to what you saw as Saltador, what he does on the independents. So, and they're great friends of mine. These are guys that I've been friends with since like early 2000s. So there was already like a built-in chemistry there. So that really helped. But yeah, we weren't above looking like fools also, because everything on the show was so serious that it was kind of like, if we can make something funny at the same time, then that's good, because there isn't a lot of that on the show. But pretty much I would say like 90 to 95% of what you saw character wise was stuff that I came up with, from like the carrot stuff to like holding what's her name hostage with a carrot to her neck, like I was gonna, like as if it was a gun or something. And it was ridiculous, right? But fortunately we were working in an absurd environment, universe, whatever, that allowed for stuff to be that ridiculous. So that was a lot of fun. But going back real quick to what Carlo was saying about the drop down too, I think it can be used obviously as a trip and as a means to get out of the way. I have used it because I, was gracious and fortunate enough to work alongside Eddie and to work with him and and work against him. But to learn with him and be backstage with him so much. And so I'll do a drop down where I may not dive in at their feet like Eddie did, because to me, it's kind of hard to replicate that. And I feel like if you're sliding in and actually clipping somebody's ankles right as they're coming off the rope, it's a little higher risk, obviously, but I will do like a drop down, and knowing that they're going to step over me, I'll do a small push up. And so it causes them to trip. Right. So you can do a little, like there was a guy named Joey Legend who, he wrestled in ECW, I think or maybe when he was in WWF Developmental, he was like just Joe. And the first time I ever had a tryout for WWF was at a house show, funny enough. And that was set up, fortunately, by one of my trainers, Dory Funk Jr. So, and it was a set of 3 house shows. It was a loop of Florida. And the house shows were set up for this other wrestler. It was like the camp, like prize pupil, this guy, Adam Windsor, who has since passed away, sadly to say, so rest in peace. But he was a friend of mine, and we had teamed, but they had set up these house show tryouts. And mind you, a tryout at a house show is almost unheard of. Like Carlo was saying, it's usually before a TV event, like a SmackDown or a Raw or something, or a Super Show or whatever. Maybe not a Super Show because there's so much going on, but even then, it happened before like a televised taping of sorts. But this was at a house show. But they set up these 3 house shows in different cities, and they were all for Adam, with a different person, a different standout from the camp each night. So I was fortunate enough to fall on the 3rd night, the last night. And, I was able to see kind of the mistakes that were being made the previous 2 nights. And so that really gave me the advantage. And I ended up being the standout of this whole project was me. So that's really what put me on the radar in terms of working with WWF and getting put on their radar in terms of like knowing that I exist. So I'm not exactly sure where I was going with this. But if you do these things like we've talked about in terms of like wrestling with intent and a believable story is going to take you much farther than a stunt show. It's nothing against the athletics or the spectacle that today's wrestling offers, because athletically, sure, it's probably greater than it's ever been. But why are there more injuries than there's ever been? And why are there, and why, say what you will, but the ratings aren't like record breaking by any means. I think one of these programs struggles to even get 1 million viewers consistently, if more often than not they're under 1 million. Whereas I know that like when we were on TV, we were hitting like 4 and 5s consistently, and that was, to me, considered kind of a down period for the company. So injuries are higher than they've ever been, and I think the stories are lesser to non-existent, because to me it's video game wrestling, and to me it's not interesting. It's not interesting,
We're going to stop right there and, like John Legend, ask you to save room for more stories, more insights, and a little bit of Manila-based kalokohan for part 2 of this interview with Paul London and Carlo Cannon. Really excited for you to hear the story of how he literally scarred himself when he was here for the SmackDown tour in November of 2006. Rowan also asks a very, very important question that's been bothering him for years and something that people still talk about to this day. And you're going to find all of that out on part 2 of this supersized episode of the Wrestling Podcast. For now, we're going to close the books on this one. Huge thanks to our babyface producers over at Podcast Network Asia for all of the work that they do behind the scenes. And thank you very much to every patron, subscriber, listener, follower who does the good work of letting people know that the Wrestling Podcast exists. On behalf of my co-hosts Ro Moran, Chino Liao, Emil ASH, and Rowan ASH, my name is Stan C, saying thank you very much, stay safe, stay healthy, and don't be a dick. Wrestling Podcast, out. Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.